Well, it's kind of funny, Sean, because I grew up and I hated reading when I was a kid. My father was a librarian, and I always thought libraries they smelled funny, the furniture was uncomfortable, there was always an elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There's always a freaky guy hanging out by the bookshelves who thought he was a vampire. I always hated the public library in South Central Los Angeles, and a lot of my students didn't have the resources that I had growing up. I mean, I realized I was very blessed. Both of my parents were at home. My parents were constantly reading in front of my brother, my sister, and me. We had tons of books in our home. They would read to us, and a lot of my students didn't have those opportunities. And so it was a wake-up call for me. I was like, shame on me. Okay, so yeah, I've taught all age levels. I started off as a high school teacher, secondary school teacher. Then they switched me from working with high school students to middle school students to upper elementary to lower elementary to pretty soon, instead of preparing students for college, I was coming home with snot marks all over my pants every single day. And I know we're not supposed to have favorite students, but I know a lot of your viewers right now are teachers, and I bet you all of them have had at least one favorite student. And my favorite student was when I was teaching my little ones. I had a little boy named Howard, and one day I was reading to my class Stuart Little by E.B. White. You should all read Stuart Little to your kids. E.B. White's a great author. And after I read, I usually read a chapter a day, and so after I read to the students, I always have the kids applaud the author. And one day, one of my little boys, Deshaun, he starts laughing to himself, and he tells his classmates, he's like, "I like Stuart because he's little." And Howard stands up, and Howard is my favorite student of all time, because Howard was the son of a Baptist preacher, and Howard's father spoke like Martin Luther King Jr., which meant Howard spoke like Martin Luther King Jr. And Howard stands up and he looks at the rest of the class. He's like, "Don't you get it? Don't you get it? We all be little. We all be little. But we be big someday, like Mr. B." And he pointed at me, and I realized this child could lead a revolt. And Howard was my favorite because I loved his unbridled enthusiasm. It's what got me out of bed every single day. I just couldn't wait to see Howard. And I worried to death for Howard, because next year I knew Howard was going to get Miss Hampton. And Miss Hampton was going to misinterpret Howard's enthusiasm as a discipline problem, because Miss Hampton was a direct descendant of Darth Vader. And I realized it was very important for me as a teacher, never give my students answers, because that doesn't do them any favors. What I have to teach my students is strategies, because sooner or later, Sean, you and I are going to meet a Miss Hampton. And as a teacher, have I prepared you for that situation? And so that's when I realized I need to give and it's nothing too difficult. But I'm always trying to teach people some basic tips. And that's what I do a lot now with parents and teachers, is what are some basic tips you can use with your child to get them excited about reading. And really, one of the easiest ways we can excite kids is with our own excitement. If you're bored with the lesson, I guarantee you the kids aren't going to be interested in the lesson. And so that's what I would recommend to all your teachers out there, is build a curriculum, build a program around students' interests. It's one of the first steps in Read Better in 67steps.com. Well, that's a great question, Sean, because there's a lot of people struggling right now. And you, just like you said, a lot of teachers are scrambling, trying to figure out, how do I serve the kids? Now, first, the most important thing, this actually brings up a really good point that a lot of people needed to learn about, is, do all of our kids have access to technology? That's very important, because if the kid doesn't have access to technology, they're definitely going to fall behind. And then secondly, do they understand how to use the technology? In my experience, it's tougher to train the teachers than the kids. Usually it's the kids training the teachers how to use the technology. I think it might be one of the greatest things ever to happen, because a lot of teachers, and I would include myself as well, a lot of us are kind of old. I mean, I'm an old guy at this point. You chop off my head, you just count the rings, because I've been around so long. And I don't understand half of the technology, or at least I didn't. And because of the COVID virus, they say that necessity is the mother of invention. And so it's forced a lot of us educators to use platforms like this one, like Zoom, which I think is extraordinary. I went from having to physically go to locations. So it would have taken me at least a day to 2 days to fly to Pakistan in Islamabad to do an in-person training for all the teachers in Islamabad. Well, now, through the internet, you and I are able to connect with no problem. I mean, after this call, I'll be on a Zoom meeting with the UK, and then after that, I'll be on with South Carolina here in the United States. So I'm able to go to 3 completely different locations on the same day, and that's awesome. And what's great is it's forcing us how to use technology. A lot of parents and teachers used to show some concerns about, oh, I don't know how to use your online engagement program, Danny. Well, now they're becoming more and more used to using technology because they have to. Not necessarily because they want to, but it's good because now they're seeing, oh, this is pretty easy to use. The teachers love it because it has a great accountability system, so they can find out which students are actually using the program with the parents. And if they see a parent's not on, they'll just send them an email, say, hey, you know, I noticed that your child's not on right now. Can you explain that? We're trying to help your kid all the way. And so it's a really good measurement system that way. We don't always get that when we're in person. And so it's just another tool. This is what I tell teachers, it's a tool. If you look at the history of technology, every time there's a new form of technology, people resist it. And so back in the 1840s, teachers resisted this new technology called the chalkboard because they thought it would get students to be lazy with reading and writing. Thomas Edison invented a thing called movies, and so teachers are like, oh, this is going to destroy kids. They'll just watch the movies and they'll never do anything. And then there was television, and then there was computers. And the one thing that's lasted throughout all this time period is teachers. Good teaching is good teaching. Don't confuse technology with teaching. And so if we want to actually physically see our students, we have to engage our students. You know, this is the thing I see in a lot of classrooms. It's almost prehistoric the way they teach. They're just teaching, they read the book out loud to the kids. Well, kids can do that on their own. Our job as educators is what can we do to be exciting. And so that's why really one of the reasons I created Read Better in 67steps.com was every day I wanted to share with parents and teachers just a quick little tip on a way to get their kid excited about reading. And so I'll just share a couple of them with you right now, Sean. So one of the things I encourage, and you know, these are meant for the parents, but the reason teachers like the program is they can send the program to the parents at home, but as teachers, it's given them ideas when they get back to their classrooms of some things that they can do with their students. And so one of the things I recommend to parents is just take a bed sheet, put it over your dining room table, and get underneath the table, and maybe you have flashlights and you can act like you're camping in a tent and read with the kids that way. That's one thing. One of the things I'm always trying to teach parents how to do is how to make reading aloud to their kids fun. And so I like to do lots of voices and I'm energetic, and a lot of teachers say, oh, I can't do that, Danny. I'm not very energetic. And I'm like, well, wait a sec. There's certain things you can do. So you can change the volume of your voice, make it loud, or make it soft is one easy way. You can speed up, or you can slow down. That's another easy way to get kids interested in what you're talking about. You know, one of the things I try to train parents to do is just to always have reading materials available. And so it's interesting because when I was in India, here in America, I often tell parents, oh, you should listen to a book on tape with your children when you're driving in the car. I'm going to guess Pakistan is very similar to India in that a lot of people don't have cars, they're on motorcycles. So obviously you're not going to do it on a motorcycle, but there's other things that you can do. Make it so it's always a pattern. So maybe before you ever get on your motorcycle, make sure to read a quick little news article to your kids or something interesting. You know, when I was in Chennai, there was a lot of boys that were interested in cricket. And so we'd go through the daily newspaper and read some of the stories about cricket because the boys were engaged in that. You know, I'm always asking kids, what are you interested in? Because when we find out what the kid's interested in, that just made our job a whole lot easier. You know, I've never had to tell a kid, go watch TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to tell a kid, go read a book. I want them to choose to do it on their own because they're interested. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish all the time. When we can get kids interested, so they're always reading for themselves, that's when we have that's when we can really make a positive change in our kids. And so that's how you engage students is, you know, I might have to talk about the history of Pakistan. Well, that might not be interesting to a 10-year-old kid is I mean, I guarantee you when I was 10, I didn't care about the history of the United States. I wanted to know about sports, things like that. And so again, we need to know this. The research is very clear on this. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. Our objective is to get those kids excited about reading. The earlier we can do that, the better, because once kids make a habit of reading, they do it a lot more. And so that's what I'm constantly trying to figure out is what are the kids interested in? How can I mean, I have 3 children of my own, and they all have very different interests. And so my oldest daughter, she likes reading, like she's 16 years old, so she likes reading books about like vampires. So we read books about vampires together. My son, he likes books about like bank robberies and things like that. And so we read about bank robberies. And then my youngest daughter, she'll read just about anything. And so right now I'm reading to her some classic books. We just read Tom Sawyer and now we're reading Huckleberry Finn because she likes it. I wouldn't read those to her if she didn't signal that she likes it. That's what I'm always trying to train parents. If a kid doesn't like it, don't read it to them. I want them to actually enjoy it and to choose to do it on their own. So that's really the easiest tip I can give everybody watching today is if you really want to get your kids engaged, you got to figure out what they're interested in. That's a great question, Sean. Thank you for that. Really, one of the people that guided my teaching philosophy when I was a teacher was Mary Poppins. If you ever saw the movie Mary Poppins, she said all kinds of amazing things. She said a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. But she said something which has guided my teaching and administrative philosophy now for over 25 years. She said, for every job there is to be done, there is an element of fun. Translation, turn it into a game. Games are good, and the way we phrase things matters. And so as a teacher, I always made it very clear to my students, I'm like, oh, we got to get this done so we can get to this next game. And the kids were very excited that, and oh, if we finish this, we get to go to the new thing. You kind of have to guide your students along that way. I mean, because there's things that we have to teach in the curriculum. And this is a great opportunity for teachers. I think too many teachers try to do everything on their own, and they don't need to. If I'm teaching 7-year-old kids, and there's 4 other teachers that teach 7-year-olds, but this teacher, she's really good with science, and this teacher, she really enjoys math, and this teacher's really good with history. Well, why am I trying to create a history lesson if there's somebody else that likes history? And I'd rather teach English. And so that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some fun English lessons, but I'm going to ask my colleague to create some really fun history lessons. And then all of us are working as a team and we're all showing our strength with the students. I mean, Pakistan's very similar to India. I know this in that you're teaching the kids science and math at such a high level. I mean, you're putting America to shame. It was immediate. when I came back to the United States, I'm like, I don't even know if we should teach math and science because the kids in Pakistan and India are so far ahead of us. I think there's things that we do better, but I was like, wow, they do a really good job in that part of the world of teaching kids science and math. But I bet you that's because that's what the teacher's interested in. And so I've always thought, hey, if somebody's better at this than me, why don't I team up with them? And they can teach what they're good at, I'll teach what I'm good at, and then we're actually always giving all the students the best possible lessons. That would be the most simple suggestion I would give. And I think this is a great opportunity during COVID to do that, is why should I create 10 lessons from scratch every day when I could create 2 lessons every day that are really good and share them with my other 4 colleagues? That's what I think more of us should be doing as teachers. Yeah, so Sean, that's a great question, because that's really what I'm always stressing is one of my mentors was a guy by the name of Jim Rohn. And so I always share one of his quotes with students. I say, just remember, poor people have really big TVs and rich people have really big libraries. And what I'm always trying to share, and you know what, and I'll actually share it with your audience. I've got a book right there, Read, Lead, and Succeed. And everybody viewing, if you go to freereadingtraining.com, I'll give everybody a complimentary copy of that book, plus a couple of digital trainings that I do with parents to give you some tips. But the thing about this book, in my studies of successful people around the world, and this would include all the world. Too often I think things are just from an American point of view. And I'm like, no, this is why I love traveling around the world, is if you look around the world, the one common element with successful people, whether they're in government or in business or in education or in athletics, is they're all readers. And you would have seen this in Canada as well. I mean, there's all kinds of Canadian examples. There's tons of examples in Pakistan and India and Iran. I was just in Egypt and I was sharing with the students all kinds of examples. I mean, this is one of the things, so Pakistan, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, is an Islamic country. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. So there's this great book. I hope all of you have read it. It's called The Quran. Have any of you ever read The Quran? So if you've read The Quran, you know the story of when the Archangel Gabriel appears to Muhammad in the cave. What's his first instruction to Muhammad? It's read. So not only is it important for us to get kids excited about reading, it's actually written in sacred text that it's our duty to get the kids excited about reading. And you see this in the major religions of the world. All of them have a text that they like, oh, the text is, you need to read the text. I mean, the way you become a better Muslim is you read the Quran and try to learn proper lifestyle every single day. And that's what all of us have to be doing. And so these are the things I'm just always trying to emphasize when you're talking about kids going to a library. I mean, nowadays, nobody can go to the library because of COVID, but you have the library, an unlimited library right in front of you. You have a computer with an internet connection. And I love technology because right now there's some poor kid in rural Pakistan, but if that kid has a laptop and an internet connection, that kid has the same access as the president of Google. You know, the world just got a whole lot smaller. You don't have to be in New York City now to be successful in the world. You're going to see people from all over the world that can have a real positive impact. I mean, just some of the most important people in the world are coming from your region of the world. Look at Malala. Malala is like the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner in history. You know, nobody would have even heard of her 100 years ago because we didn't have the technological capability to even understand that part of the world. Everything always came from Europe or from America. Now, no. Now everything's China and it can be Zimbabwe. It doesn't matter. And that's why I'm excited about that. And that's what I told, the girls. I spoke to a school of girls in Chennai, and 2 seniors came up to me at the end of this presentation, and one wanted to be a lawyer and one wanted to be a doctor. I said, that's great. Are you going to go to university here? Or maybe you'll go to the United Kingdom or the United States? I'm like, oh, we can't go. We're girls. I'm like, get back in that auditorium. And I told them, I'm like, hey, within within 5 years, India is going to be the largest country on the planet in terms of population. I'm like, India is a very young democracy. It's only 70 years old, yet they've already elected a woman prime minister. Pakistan. I was pointing this out because some Americans were talking about the inequalities with Muslim women, and I'm like, Pakistan's had a woman prime minister. America still hasn't had a woman president. So don't tell me about that. That's a very narrow-minded. And this is really what I love about education. It gives us an opportunity to experience new cultures. I mean, when I was in Egypt in September, I spoke to an all-Islamic school, and I spoke at 2 in the afternoon, and over 400 parents showed up. And all the fathers, they had the very long beards, and all the women were wearing the burqas. And I gotta admit, I had a lot of preconceptions of what these people would be like. And we were talking just like this, and I'm like, gosh, that's why all of us need to get to know everybody around the world. Is the more I travel, the more I realize people are people. You know, we'd be so much better off. And this is my excitement with students, is I want to, a lot of my students might never leave Pakistan. They might never leave Islamabad. But I can give them a passport to the world by reading to them stories about successful people everywhere. And that's what gets me excited. A library is your passport to the world. And so I'm a person that loves physical libraries. I know you love physical libraries, Sean, but if they can't go to a physical library, they have that library right there on their computer, and they can use that. I want to get them excited about researching. I mean, now all the time, I'm constantly learning new information. Things that I had to used to physically go to the library about, now I can just go on Google and type them up, and I've got my answers to the questions. It's very exciting to me. Well, the great thing, Sean, is everybody has the opportunity to excel or be at the bottom, no matter where they're at. I've been in some of the poorest schools here in the United States, and they had some really good teachers that lifted up their students. And I've been in some of the richest school districts in America, and they had really poor teachers that were actually hindering their students. And so I've always had the belief, I always want to teach in the poorest area. I want to teach the kids that nobody else wants, and I believe in getting my kids to be in a believer's mindset. One of the first things I tell my students is, sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. I believe in all of you, and they only give me the best and the brightest, and you're going to be the next prime minister or the next Supreme Court justice or the next really good parent because I believe in you. I was blessed. I had great parents, Sean, and they always gave me positive feedback and encouragement. And that's why I love working with, probably nothing gets me more excited. I would love to go to Islamabad, to a school where the teachers feel like they're not making a difference. Give me a couple of days with those teachers, and they'll be running through walls to get those kids excited, because all of us need encouragement. All of us need that pat on the back, and that's what I do. That's what I love to do. Is I used to do it with the students. Now I'm working with the teachers and the parents to get them excited. And so again, if people just go to freereadingtraining.com, I'll make sure all of you get a copy of the book Read, Lead, and Succeed, which is a book. I wrote that for a principal who didn't know how to engage his faculty. So I said, okay, I'll write you a book. And so once a week, every week, I give you an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're probably too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's picture book recommendation that you can read in 5 minutes, demonstrates the same concept. All of us need encouragement. There's too much negativity in the world. You need to start feeding yourself positive things. Everybody that's on this Zoom meeting right now is doing that. You could have done a lot of different things right now. You could have gone and just went out and drank liquor with your friends, or you could have watched TV, but you chose to improve yourself by reading something, by watching something educational. And that's the kind of person I really want in our reading program, because I want to work with people that want to get kids inspired to go higher. I mean, I bet you everybody watching right now became a teacher the same reason I became a teacher, because you have the opportunity to get those kids to excel, and that gets me excited. Really, the COVID virus might be the greatest thing ever to happen to teachers, because all these parents that used to think, oh, it's so easy to teach, that's a really easy job. Now all of a sudden they have their own kids at home and they have to teach them, and they're like, enough after one day. I don't want this, send them back to school. So I've been pointing out to a lot of parents, I'm like, you think it's tough just teaching your kid? Try teaching 45 kids in a classroom, all from different backgrounds, and trying to keep all of them engaged. You can't even engage your 1 or 2 kids. Think about me trying to teach 45. So I think a lot of parents now have a newfound respect for teachers. They realize teaching's not easy. Now, in terms of during the COVID virus, now that the parents are forced to teach their kids, well, again, this is an opportunity for us as teachers to show our stuff. A lot of those parents may have never actually come to our classrooms to see how we teach. I love video because it gives them an opportunity to see what kind of teacher I am. A lot of teachers are afraid of that. I'm like, I would never be afraid of that. You can always judge me based on my teaching. Come and watch me and do a videotape of you, do a videotape of me. Let's see who teaches the lesson better. How do we get kids to comprehend? And again, that's why I think it's really important for us as teachers to team up with our colleagues and find out who's really good at what. Let's create super dynamite lessons, and so that we can relieve some of that burden for parents, because it's not easy for parents either. Parents are trying to do their jobs while also now having to teach their kids. Well, if they're satisfied with the video instruction that teachers are giving, and you were exactly right when you were saying some teachers are working 24 hours a day, because now instead of being in the classroom, I've got to teach online, but then I have to have individual conferences with all of my students. And the more students I have, the more this is taking up a lot of time. And all of us know that some students take a little bit of time and some students take a lot of time. And so that's what's really important now during COVID, is how can we still differentiate instruction to meet the needs of all of our different students. And that, again, that's one of the reasons I created Read Better in 67steps.com, was I wanted to make it easier on teachers, because if they can get the parents watching these videos with the kids, it's going to get kids excited about learning. And the more excited they are to learn, the easier my job is as a teacher, because I already have students that are curious. And that's really what I'm constantly looking for, is how can I get my kids curious? I don't care how they do in my class. I don't care how they do next year. I care that they continue to learn all the throughout their life. School is just a very small part of our life. The whole purpose of school isn't that you can pass some exam. The purpose of school is so that we can build great citizens that are constantly questioning and constantly learning. If you don't constantly question and constantly learn, well, we're all dead in the water. And this is worldwide. All of us should, as adults, we need to be exhibiting that all the time. I love it when kids ask me why. A lot of parents get annoyed because the kids are asking questions all the time. I think that's great. When they stop asking questions, that's when I know they've lost interest. So I need to keep them asking questions and keeping them interested.